This is breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
Welcome in, everyone. The 2023 NFL Draft has officially come to an end. Your Vegas Nation host, Cassie Soto, here with you after the Raiders drafted 9 new players. They're adding a bunch of talent to their roster this year, so let's go ahead and break it all down for you. Joining me in studio is Las Vegas Review-Journal sports columnist Adam Hill. Adam, 9 players, but let's just say Day 3, congratulations, you made it. How many cups of coffee did you have in these last 3 days?
I think I'm working on like 37 and 38 right now, maybe at the same time. I think you're in the ballpark, but not quite there. It's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride for the Raiders for sure. We're going to hear Dave Ziegler kind of wrapping up everything that the Raiders did, but we expected them to go heavy on defense, and they did. They only made 9 of the 12 selections. They used some of those picks to really target some guys they wanted, move up on the draft board, as we expected they might do. 12 players is a lot to draft in a single year. So got 9 players, 6 on the defensive side. The defense really needed help. I think that's really what we expected. The only thing we didn't see them do is address offensive line, but I imagine right now they're making a lot of calls, signing some undrafted free agents, and offensive line will be high on the priority list.
Yeah, right now you mentioned, oh, look at that. There he is, Dave Ziegler. You say his name and he appears. Look at that. So let's go ahead and go out to Henderson, Nevada to hear from Raiders general manager Dave Ziegler.
Before we get started, just want to again thank all of our college scouts, all of the pro scouts, all of our coaches that were involved in the process over the last 3 days. Just really clean and excellent collaboration, communication. Our area scouts who most live in different parts of the country have come in to help support us and provide feedback and provide information, and they all just did an excellent job. Really proud of our group. I'm really proud of our coaching staff and our administration staff here, and just everyone that's come together the last 3 days. We have a really cohesive group, really low ego group, and everybody that puts the team first, and that's what we're striving to build here. And so just very thankful and grateful for all the people that work in both the scouting, coaching, and operations department over the last 3 days. And here we are, and now we're moving forward to the next phase of team building and OTAs and all those different things. So excited to move forward, excited about the last 3 days, and excited for the future here and what we kind of have going on. So that's what I have. Everybody else can tell me what they have.
Several guys you picked that your coaches had an impact on at the Senior Bowl. Can you talk about how big getting that Senior Bowl coaching staff is for the Raiders?
Yeah, it's another kind of detailed exposure that you often don't usually get if you don't have a coach involved. I think we talked about it the other day, but just being able to really see how guys learn, really get to see how guys operate day to day in meeting rooms, at practice, interaction with their teammates. Those are all things that we looked at, all things that we got feedback on. It wasn't just about the football performance. It was about how they treated each other, how they interacted, what their commitment was, and all those different types of things, different positions that they could play. And so it was a really valuable tool for us, and something that we utilized and helped us in the decision-making process here over the weekend.
Aiden O'Connell was a guy that kind of fight his way from the back of the line over at Purdue. Does that kind of mindset play into that a little bit? What was it about him that felt that you guys wanted to pull the trigger on that?
Yeah, to that, I think he was a walk-on. I think he started as the 8th string quarterback at Purdue and worked his way all the way up and eventually became a starter there. A lot of things. I'd say the one thing about quarterbacks that you don't get to see if you're just watching tape or if you're just watching games is, I'd say, over 50% of their success rate is really about what they're made of from the neck up. And ability, intelligence, ability to process, those types of intangibles, leadership, and felt like he has a lot of those different intangible qualities that we think are really, really important to have any chance to be successful in the league at a quarterback. Also liked the tape. To be honest with you, I watched him at the end of October, and I walked down to Josh before he wasn't going to see him for another 3 or 4 months and said, when you watch this kid, this is going to be a guy that you like. So I think a lot of the things that he did at Purdue, some of the things that he showed, there's areas to grow into, but he showed a lot of the things that we wanted from the quarterback position. And then when we got to meet him and spend time with him, he confirmed a lot of the, I'd say, neck-up traits that we look for.
You said multiple times this offseason that you need to inject the roster with, some homegrown talent, and that you want to build some competitive depth at every position. Obviously, not every single position did, but do you feel like you've started to work towards that with this draft class?
Started to. Unfortunately, when you go through the draft, you're not able to answer every question that you need, as you work through it, just the way that the draft goes. There's 31 other teams that are selecting players too. And so we did do that at certain spots. I think there's some areas of the team that we're going to continue to look to address and improve and add competition. But, I think definitely on the defensive line, we added some competition there. At the safety position, at the receiver position, that we added some competition there. We obviously added a tight end, but we still have some other areas of the team that we need to continue to grow and continue to work at, which that'll kind of be the next phase that we're getting into now is, looking at those areas, looking at what the other available players are, and see if there's other ways that we can improve the team.
You guys were pretty aggressive the whole draft, but especially today. You traded up to get the first three guys.
Yeah.
Was that part of the game plan coming in today with that much capital, or just kind of how things go?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of a product of this draft. I wouldn't say the depth in this draft as we went through was probably as strong as it has been in past years, and so I think it was a product of just kind of how the draft started to play out and what it really started. Kind of once you get into it, you can have an idea, but you start to get a feel, almost like how a game's going to be played. You start to get a feel of the board and kind of what the overall surplus is or lack of a surplus is. And so I think that influenced some of our decision making in terms of packaging some picks and moving up to get some targets based on what we thought was potentially going to be left for us at the end of the draft.
When you look at your board and the players you're able to get, did you do better than you thought you would, or about the same?
Haven't thought about that yet. I would like to think we did better. I think that's the easy answer to say. But that doesn't go without things that I'm going to go back and look at and second guess some decisions here or there, or look at how the board fell in play. I mean, there's still going to be an element of going back and quality controlling some of our decisions and some of the decisions that I made and things like that. But overall, we do feel really good about it, and we feel really excited about it. But there'll still be areas to look at and say, hey, we can improve here or there. So there's always areas to grow.
Last night,
You?
How important was it for you to get some of those guys on defense that had production, guys that had interceptions, forced fumbles, sacks? They were able to do something with the ball and get it back.
Yeah, it was an area we wanted to improve as a team, is just ball disruption. It wasn't a statistical category that we ranked very highly in last year. And so, like Jacorian, I think in the last 2 years he had more plays on the ball than one of the top players in college football in terms of making plays on the ball. And so, yeah, guys that can make plays on the football and disrupt the football or disrupt the pocket, which can cause disruptive plays, things of that nature, were some definitely influential factors, especially when you're looking at corners. You're always going to that stat sheet when you're starting to watch a corner and see what their production was or lack of production, what the history was there. You have to be careful sometimes because of what they were asked to do in coverage and how they were asked to play, but it is an important factor.
Dave, you mentioned last night about today is more about developing guys, diamonds in the rough. So you get the 7th round, 231. That's clearly mining for some guys. But you find Nesta, a guy a lot of people maybe projected in the 5th round. Were you a little surprised he was there?
Yeah, we were. Just the production that he had this year at Arizona State. Now, he had started his career at Miami and transferred to Arizona State. He was a really disruptive player this year. He wasn't a player that I had been able to spend much time on prior to draft meetings. I'm only able to watch so many players, but when we put on the tape, it was just surprising to see this inside player, just how disruptive he was in the run game. A lot of penetration, a lot of plays where he's in the backfield, and just a lot of plays where he's finding the football and making tackles. And so those guys are hard to find. Sometimes these guys that are transferring and things like that can get lost in the shuffle a little bit. But Antonio Pierce had knew him from his recruiting days while he was at Arizona State, so he had some knowledge of him. And then the new head coach at Arizona State wasn't there with Nestra, but is in the building now and obviously has connections. Kenny Dillingham was someone that I coached at Chaparral High School when I was coaching high school football in Arizona. So there were some connections for us just to learn a little bit about his journey, learn about who he was. And he was also a guy we brought in for a 30 visit. So we got to spend some time with him in the building. And so, yeah, really excited that he was there. And again, there's going to be a lot of competition in that defensive tackle room. Everyone's going to have to buckle up and bring their best every day because there's going to be a lot of hungry people in that room.
And going back to the turnovers, Christopher Smith, I think 6 interceptions the last 2 years. Where do you see him fitting in?
Yeah, Chris Smith, when I watched him, reminded me a lot of Duron Harmon. And his ability, Duron obviously was a great player for us last year, but Chris relies on his instincts and awareness to make plays on the football. As a student of the game, he has a very unique ability, I would say, just to pattern read, look at a route concept, how it develops out of the snap, and make some reads that he's able himself to be in position to make plays on the football. Also a physical kid, not the biggest in stature. When you look at Chris Smith and you just read the numbers, I don't think he ran a super fast 40. He's not a super big guy, but when you put on the tape, he's a guy that impresses you. He's probably, there's a few picks on this, but after the Chris Smith pick, 4 or 5 texts from different, GMs around the league where, they were targeting Chris Smith just because of how good of a football player he was. So excited about him to come in and see him compete with, with that group.
You ended up with 6 defensive players and 3 offensive. Is that the split coming in you thought it would be based on your need, or is it just the way the board fell?
Wasn't 100% sure, how that was actually going to come out. Obviously, there was a defensive focus going in, or a hope, I would say, that it was going to be a defensive focus, but you really never know how the board's going to go, and players you're going to lose out on. And there was a player or two that we were targeted that did get picked a couple picks before we were going to take them a time or two. And so there was a defensive focus going in, but I would say, generally speaking, the board fell that way. I would say, yes, when there was maybe some things that were close here in the set today, we leaned a little bit more heavy to the defensive side.
You talked about emphasizing turning over the ball and things like that, and Amari Burney he led Florida with a couple of interceptions, and he talks about having the best hands on that Florida team. He's been described as being somewhat of a tweener safety linebacker. Yeah. Where do you see him fitting into the defense?
Yeah, we think he's a linebacker. He started as a safety, played linebacker at Florida this year, and thought he did. That's a transition that's not super easy to make. Just your line of vision and how you see the game from a safety position to a linebacker position. It's a lot more quicker reaction from the linebacker spot. We thought he's done a really good job over his career developing as a linebacker. He does also have that coverage ability that you kind of see that safety background. And I think, in college, sometimes they line those guys up. They make them play a little bit more man coverage. You don't see a lot of linebackers in the pros play man coverage anymore. Obviously, you do it a little bit in cover one. One of the things we look at when we're watching linebackers at the pro level or college level is their ability to close space and zone, because that's really what they're asked to do more than anything else, is drop into zone and close space. And he could do that. Also had a couple good plays in playing tight ends and things like that down the seam. So I think he's a versatile guy that's still growing. Impeccable traits, was one of the most highly thought of guys there at that Florida program. Went down there for the pro day this year. Myself and Champ were down there and got to see him in person. He ran a 4.51. In some clocks, they had him at a 4.48, 4.49. So he's a kid that can run. So excited about the athleticism that he brings, and excited about the mentality that he brings too.
When it comes to determining one pick over the other, how much did the attitude, the foundational type of assets that make a player go into weighing one over the other in this particular draft for you?
That always plays a big role for us. I think that, I talked about this at different times in my first year, but we have different grades that we grade in terms of, we grade the player for what he does on the field, And then we also have a level of grades of I would say, just the character, the football intelligence, and putting that all together. I just think it's so hard to win in the NFL that you want to be careful of how many people you're bringing in that are going to expel extra resources. We understand that everyone's developing and growing and that these are young kids. That's why we have a player development department and we have a rookie program and we have all these things to help grow individuals. But if you're spending a lot of time, I'd say, worrying about guys being on time or, extra time in the training room or immaturity and different things like that, that definitely weighs into our thought process when we're making different picks. And again, you're going to take some calculated risks and gambles. Not everyone's going to be perfect, and we understand that. But the lower the maintenance on the player, I think that gives you a better opportunity, one, for that player to grow because there's less distractions, and then it kind of magnifies for the team. And it's when you have a lot more people that are not maintenance and are focusing just on winning football games, I think that's a good foundation.
Obviously aggressive, making the trades up and getting Tucker in the third. How challenging is it to gauge other teams' interest in the guys you like?
It's a challenging part of it because you really don't know. We do put a lot of time into studying team needs and trying to understand what other teams' draft philosophies are. But it's hard to know really like exactly how they feel about maybe a specific player on their team. Maybe we have that player graded low, and they think he's maybe a starting level player, where we think he's someone that they would maybe want to replace. And so there's a lot of that's tough. And then I'd say in the earlier rounds, because it is more focused on best available player, it's not always tied directly into needs. That makes it a little bit more difficult too. And so, yeah, you take some calculated risks and gambles, and sometimes, we'll look back, we'll probably drafted a guy, some guys, a handful of spots too early, and I think there's probably other teams that can kind of feel the same way. And so, yeah, it's a really difficult part of the process in the draft of kind of trying to gauge all that. We put a lot of effort into it and try to do the best we can.
Corian, what were some of the things you guys liked about him? It seems like a lot of people are pointing to the game against Ohio State in terms of how he stepped up against some really good receivers.
Yeah, I think watching Jacorian and spending time watching him in 2021 and in 2022, the one thing that we saw was just some growth and development as a defensive back, and specifically his ability. He improved his ability to find the football. Especially making plays down the field, which for a defensive back is one of the more difficult things, where you're running and tracking vertical routes, your back's to the quarterback, being able to find and play the ball. We felt like he improved in that area. He's very fast. As evident to his 40 speed. He ran a 4.30, I believe, at the combine, 4.31, and you can see that speed on tape. His ability to close space, also good sturdy build, physical kid, someone that we also think is going to be able to contribute in the kicking game, which is important for us. So his speed, explosiveness, and like I said, I think his growth from 21 to 22, and we think there's more growth to for him. There's some more growth for him to do, and we're excited about that.
No offensive lineman. Is that an area to keep an eye on in UDFA or post-draft free agency?
Yeah, they're upstairs right now working through all that. We're going to add some, we'll add some linemen to our UDFA class. And another where the board just at a couple spots just didn't fall that exact way. There were some offensive linemen that we targeted in the draft. A couple got picked a spot or two before we were going to take them, and we had to pivot and go in a different direction. But, this is also the next phase of team building also. So, between now and the start of the season, there's going to be different opportunities, whether it's people that are still on the street, whether there's trade opportunities, whether it ends up being at the cut down. There's going to be some areas of the team that we still want to target and grow.
We'll go a few more. We'll go Hondo, Case, and then Q.
Dave, there's a lot of people that fall in love with specifics, height, weight, whatever. And there's some guys that maybe you didn't fit into those molds, but each of them have an edge. They come with it. They play with an edge. They practice with an edge. It seems like that was really a big detail for you this draft. Am I overstating it?
No, I think that's right. And I would just, philosophically, the measurables do play into some decision making, but it's not something philosophically that is really dominant for us. That's not something that, say, the way that I was trained, but also just what we believe in. We really just we believe in the tape. And then we believe in the research on the background and the person, because I think what we're looking for is people that have a growth mindset, people that have a passion and a love for football. so they can improve, so they can grow, so they can, work on different parts of their game. And so that, along with just the football tape, is most important to us. I've seen, so many guys of different shapes and sizes, succeed in the NFL from the time that I've been in the league, that's not so much as a focus for us as much as the tape, the attitude, and their love for football. Now, again, Tyree Wilson is an impressive-looking dude, and so there is some elements of that too. When you can get the best of both worlds, it's great, but we're not going to eliminate a specific player because of their measurables.
Taking you back to Aiden, when you say you go in the season and tell Josh you're going to love this guy, does then he a few months later come back and tell you you're absolutely right? And how often do you have those conversations with him when you're scouting someone and you see someone that you want to go tell him?
Yeah, during the fall, I try to limit it to let him focus on focus on the team and focus on football. But Josh loves the scouting aspect of the whole process. Some coaches do, some coaches don't. Josh started in personnel at the beginning of his career, and so he enjoys the tape aspect, breaking down prospects, kind of fitting all the puzzle pieces together. And so, when I know there's a prospect that I think that's going to fit our mold and that he's going to like, I'll let him know in the fall. He'll kind of put it to the side, and then, eventually he'll come back up and tell me that I was right, and that's a player that he liked.
I know you drafted Byron Young yesterday. I wasn't here for it, but we know what he brings to the field. Stopping the run, really good at that. But one thing that stood out to me was when he was talking about being a winner and helping the locker room as much. How much does that mentality of him being a guy who feels like he can change even the culture? How much does that help as well with the team?
Yeah, it's really important. We're still at the beginning stages of developing this program and laying the foundation for the type of program we want here in Las Vegas. And so Byron has a lot of the traits. He's been a part of a winning program, a part of a program that's demanding, and that is kind of a championship caliber breed. And so bringing players in with that DNA that can add to what we're already putting together. We think, what he's about and what he's experienced is there's a lot of similarities in the things that we value. And so, to have a guy like that to kind of, be one of the leaders of the rookie class and with his ideals and his experiences, I think that's going to help the whole group.
All right, you guys all set?
Yep.
A lot of quarterbacks taken the end of the fourth round.
Quarterbacks.
Yep. End of the fourth, the fifth. I'm wondering, is there a pocket of guys that teams are looking out for? The first guy goes, all of a sudden now it's time to get a quarterback, and you kind of worry about how fast they're going to go?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's what happened today because it was a crazy run on quarterbacks. I think Haener maybe was one of the first ones to go. Yeah, and I think that is what happened. I think, people started, that's what we kind of looked at it as, okay, here comes the run, so, gave us a little bit more of, an aggressive mindset to go up and get the guy that we wanted to get. And then you saw those dominoes continue to fall. And so, sometimes the draft works that way. I guess it happened with the receivers in the first round, too. No receivers were taken, then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 went. So I do think that was kind of part of what happened today.
All right, last one, Levi.
Obviously, this is your second season with Josh McDaniels as the GM head coach dynamic, and even though you guys are close, how much more synergy would you say you had in this year's draft prior to last year's?
More because we had more time. We felt like we had more time, and we did have more time just to kind of work through the process of from the very beginning. And what I mean by that is last year that everything just felt, everything was much more rushed. At this time last year that he was still trying to teach the coaches, implementing the offensive system and the defensive system. There was more time needing to be spent for him with the coaching staff and with the players, with OTAs and things of that, and just a lot more preparation, I would say. He had to spend too last year just as a first-year head coach in the spring, getting ready for our first kind of off-season with the players. And so there was a lot more time that we were able to spend and he was able to spend on the draft process. And so it was just more clarity, more thoroughness, I would say, for us. And, the communication between him and myself was always very good. But it just was just a smoother process.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
See you tomorrow.
Once again,
So we'll be back here tomorrow, right?
wraps up the 2023 NFL draft for us here. His team, of course, drafting 9 new players in this draft class. Adam, he isn't going to say, yeah, we did horrible. We didn't pick anybody that was on our board, right? He was fairly confident in his answers there. They said that they were picking players, obviously, as they went, as the board fell, and you can never really know how the board is going to fall. But overall, would you say General Manager Dave Ziegler was pretty happy with his responses here?
Yeah, and I think, look, any team is going to say that they got the guys that they wanted because they took the guys that are at the top of their draft board when they are on the clock. But he did mention, look, there's guys that we wanted that we thought we might get, and teams took them ahead of us, and that's how this works. And actually, sometimes that tells you might be on the right course if other teams like the same guys you do in the same area that you do. Not necessarily you want to have part of groupthink, but definitely you want to, you want to see the things similar to how other people do, how people have scouted a player and say, look, that is a guy that we really liked. Other teams liked him too. Okay, no, we move on to plan B. But they addressed defense. That was the biggest thing. They got 6 new defensive players at all levels. They need playmakers all over the defense. They were able to do that. A couple of pieces here and there on offense as well, including, I think, a really good value pick in Michael Mayer, who we thought was going to go in the first round. They get him in the second. Wasn't necessarily a big area of concern. They didn't need a tight end, but he's there. He's very talented. He's a good player for the future, and they're able to grab him. So I think when you look what they did, they stockpiled areas they needed to. They got some talented players that they wanted, and now they can move forward, add some other guys in free agency here, guys that were not drafted, and then have their roster closer to being set for training camp.
Yeah, well, speaking of those players, let's go ahead and hear from some of the Raiders draft players that they went ahead and picked up over these last 3 days.
New to Raiders as a kid, it's a great organization with a lot of history, a lot of great traditions, and I'm excited to be at an organization where a lot of great pass rushers have been before me.
The mentality really comes from, how my parents raised me. My parents always raised me to be a winner. And then when I got to Alabama, that's something that we always harped on too. And so I haven't lost many games in my career. And, I would love if I can go in and help that culture get to, the same, just really help improve the culture and continue to go in there and impact everybody in a positive way. And, like you asked, you said, I think they'll be getting a great player, but also a player who can, transition into becoming a leader. Because they already have a lot of great guys on the team, like Chandler Jones, Max Crosby. They drafted Tyree earlier tonight. So it's going to be a deep group of guys up there, man. But I just want to come in. I want to impact it right away. And I just want to, give them everything I can.
It's the people around me. Growing up, I was, pretty low on the depth chart. But my family, my friends always made me feel like I was, the best quarterback in the world, even when I wasn't. And so I think it's just, the support I had around me. I think I have a passion for the game that, even when circumstances around me may seem bleak, I think because I love the game and I have support from others, I'm able to kind of push through those circumstances.
Once you feel like you've made it, just stopping and not continuing to keep going, that's a recipe for disaster. So not being complacent and just staying consistent, I'll say those are the 2 main components to winning. And that's something I learned very early on at the University of Georgia, and I think it translates well to the NFL.
So it was surreal for the Raiders, to call me, and then the feeling I had was I was shaking. I didn't want to cry, but I think like 2 tears dropped in my eyes a little bit, but I was just really shaking. I couldn't really speak when we was on the phone talking, and it just really felt surreal that I get to play with my cousin. He plays for the Raiders right now, so that's just, saw my mom, she was talking about it a long time ago. She was like, what if the Raiders call you and then you get to reunite with your cousin for the first time? So this feeling is great right now.
New to Raiders as a kid, it's a
Amari
great...
Burney, very excited now to be coming to the Las Vegas Raiders. And with a familiar face here, his cousin that he's talking about is cornerback Brandon Facyson, a 6-year veteran in the NFL. He even mentioned a soundbite that we didn't include there, that he already has called Brandon and asked, hey, can I live with you because I don't want to buy a house yet.
Rent's expensive, man. I don't blame him. If you have somebody living here already, it's a great opportunity to reach out and say, hey, look, I want to learn the ropes, and also you make some money, man. I haven't done that quite yet, so how about I get some free rent from you?
You got a spare couch, an extra futon or something?
I think it's smart. And then you can find where you want to live. You can figure it out. You can learn the city a little bit. I think it's a great way to do it. And under the guise of I want to spend time with my family, nobody really wants to spend time with their family, but free rent is nice. Yes. I think that's good.
Well, just again, your thoughts here, Adam, as we wrap up the 2023 NFL Draft. I went ahead and asked some fans on YouTube just their thoughts on what they would grade the Raiders. A fan saying a C+ or maybe a B-. Somebody else given here a B+, I believe. Your thoughts as we wrap up here and look at the Raiders 2023 draft class.
Look, it's tough. I'm going to have to do my official formal grades in the paper come Monday, so make sure to check that out. I'll analyze it a little further. But first reaction, I think you look and say, got a bunch of defensive players. That was necessary. They were able to use some of those draft picks to target guys that they wanted. That's very important. Didn't address offensive line, but I don't think they had to. I think defense was more important. So in terms of filling out all levels of the defense, finding some playmakers, I think they did a good job. I think there's a couple guys they might have reached on a little bit, but they went for some traits, and that's something Dave Ziegler talked about. Like, look, guys that have very high-end speed, we might go ahead and take them a little sooner than you think because that could develop into something down the road. Michael Mayer, a great steal. There's still a couple picks I'm a little bit skeptical of, but I think B is fair at this point. But most teams you can't really grade right now. I mean, there's some teams that really have a disastrous draft, like Detroit on day one, but they saved themselves as well. So tough to analyze really until way down the road, but I think first glance you go B for this draft and say they did a pretty good job of just filling out the roster a little bit.
Awesome stuff, Adam. Well, thank you so much for joining me here these last couple of days. This is not the end, though, for Adam. He's going to be busy here right in, so be sure you head on over to VegasNation.com again for those grades, for a draft analysis. He's going to do a breakdown of all the players to give you some behind-the-scenes knowledge of each new player, new Las Vegas Raider here joining the Silver and Black. For all of your Raiders news, once again, head on over to VegasNation.com. He's Adam Hill. I'm Cassie Soto. Big thank you to Larry Meir, Heidi Fang, Vinny Bonsignor, Leandre Fox, the whole team really putting in some work for us this week. That'll do it for the 2023 NFL Draft.
You've been watching Breaking News from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.